Hello there and welcome back to the Lizardmen Abridged campaign. Last time we took some territory from the Abominations, but the main focus was on a big attack by the High Elves. They came at us with two armies and managed to inflict upon us a pretty costly defeat. They destroyed one of our main armies in a choke point battle and really damaged one of our settlements that we used for getting ritual currency. They went on to defeat us again at a more minor settlement, and we've just got done facing that defeat. So now it's time to try and sort this mess out. Here are the results from that loss. We did manage to achieve something. Several enemy units, including a hero, were denied to them in that fight. So now Tyrion's army doesn't really have much power left. It's unlikely to be able to inflict another defeat against us. Plus, it didn't actually do anything to the settlement. Well, it sacked it, but I always regard sacking as doing nothing because it's so easily reversible. So ultimately, not much has come of that second defeat, and that's pretty good. But more elves are on the way. There's a stack that we saw in the last episode hanging around on our border, and our force that saw it gets attacked by it. Luckily, we were able to escape, leaving us still with the possibility of getting kroq-gar and our main force just to the east there into a position to stop these guys. Unfortunately though, we did discover there's another full stack of elves on the way, so they are going to have local superiority for the next few turns at least. We'll have to see what they do with it. Tyrion appears to be falling back once again, but that's not the first time he's done that, so we have to still pay attention to what he's up to. I tried to get a peace treaty with the elves, but that didn't go anywhere. I think they might just have a vendetta against us after we tried to intervene with their first ritual many turns ago. I'm not sure. Maybe they've just decided that we're a better rival than the Dark Elves because we're the player, so we just deserve it. So anyway, we start rebuilding the salt plains there. Going to throw down a new lord and get some troops there, just in case Tyrion goes back. That's going to cut him off, make sure he can't cause too much trouble in the area. And kroq-gar is going to start heading back to the Pyramid of Nagash, because I strongly suspected that that was where the elves were heading with those two other armies, just because they attacked it before, and because it's one of the ritual currency sites. I'm guessing the AI is somewhat scripted to prioritize targeting those over everything else, since it screws you over a tiny bit more than losing a regular settlement. I'm also going to consolidate my forces over to the west, just to make sure we have the front line pretty much covered. We've always got something to resist the enemy no matter where they attack. I was going to keep moving west here with Ruwa to try and find more Abomination settlements to take, but I'm going to have to move back because we can see just up to the right there's an Abomination army sneaking into our territory, so we need to try and cut it off somewhere and prevent that from doing damage to our back lines. So let's see what happens. The elf armies start moving, and they are going for kroq-gar at the Pyramid of Nagash, so I guess that was a correct prediction, but it's going to lead to a bit of trouble really, because now we're trapped in the settlement. We have to fight this battle, and it's pretty much the same battle that we lost in the previous part. Same map and with roughly the same armies, although I think both sides probably have better armies overall, and the enemy have lots of cavalry this time and slightly fewer archers, I think. But anyway, we're going to have to use what we learned last time to try and make sure the result goes a little bit differently, especially keeping in mind that they do still have loads of those siege weapons which they used to such great effect last time. So the main thing we're going to do is not defend the choke point at all. We're going to try and draw these enemy units through the choke point to fight on our side of the map. We can see so much cavalry there, and all of their cavalry has the anti-infantry special bonus thing, which is pretty annoying since we have so much infantry in our army. They're not going to do very well against those cav. Now we're going to face pretty much the same issue as before, because the enemy's siege weapons have such long range. Even sitting right at the back of the map and camping on the line, the enemy don't even have to move those things through the choke point to attack us, so they're still in a very safe position where we can't retaliate, and we're going to start taking losses very quickly indeed. That means we're going to have to counterattack them rather than try to play to the defensive strengths of our hill, especially because you can see the enemy's archers have huge range. They're just dropping arrows on the top of the hill, and that's going to increase the damage even further. We need to try and get this fight going. We've drawn them through the choke point just about as far as they're going to go, although we did have more success over here on the wing, where I placed all of the garrison units that I didn't really expect to do much in the fight, and they attracted lots of attention from the enemy, so that's splitting their army up. That's all good, although the fights we're actually going to get won't be massively good for us in terms of the result, but at least it's keeping them away from the action, giving us space to move. Here, one of their phoenixes got trapped by some of our kroq-gars and a stegodon, so we'll just slap away at the poor bird, and I think it actually routed and went away in the end, so we are going to deny them that phoenix early on in the fight. Meanwhile, got some spears trying to deal with the enemy's eagles, but now the enemy are countering with these axe troops, who are probably the hard counter to these spears, so that's going to go pretty badly, and the spears themselves were actually pretty much losing the fight just because it's difficult anyway. And here's our big problem right now. Our front line's advance is so slow that we're just taking an absolute pounding getting into position, and this makes the fight much messier than it would otherwise have been, because units are just running all over the place on the enemy side, so it's hard for us to get an actual straight frontline engagement going where the enemy can't just use their superior speed to constantly outflank all of our out of position units. So this is going to be a huge mess, and there's not much we can do right now. I've got these kroq-gars trying to take care of enemy cav, but that didn't quite work like I thought it might. The cav don't get their stat bonuses fighting things as big as kroq-gars, but they still have high stats in general, so we couldn't just wipe them out using our limited number of not infantry units. Now the main thing we need to do in this fight is take out these bolt throwers. They're the most powerful unit the enemy has, because they can hit everything that we have with impunity and will rack up hundreds of kills just like they did last time if we don't stop them. But as you can see, there's a massive problem that's going to stop us from doing anything about this. All of our units are going into their primal mode because they're starting to take damage. That means you can't give them any more orders, so we can't explicitly tell them to go and take out the bolt throwers. They just go for the nearest thing, and the nearest thing are just these blobs of elves. So big blobby engagements start, and those bolt throwers will keep damaging us the whole time, and they're causing enormous casualties, along with the actual melees themselves being difficult. That's only going to make things worse. So we're losing most of our infantry very, very quickly at this stage, and the fact that everything is a huge chaotic mess makes it harder as well, because we're constantly taking flank attacks and rear attacks. There's an example of a primal unit just wandering across the battlefield really slowly, being annihilated by those bolt thrower shots. Nothing we can do there, unfortunately. At least we are damaging the enemy quite a lot as well. Elves aren't massively hardy in battle. They have lots of high stat units, but you can kill them easily enough, especially when you have gigantic dinosaurs helping you out. So we are going to start inflicting morale shots on the enemy as they start taking losses as well. My one hope to take out those bolt throwers has settled down onto Timmy, who is just going to have to fight them all on his own. He was the one unit that made it to them without turning into primal mode. But since he's just one entity, he can't really lock all of these down into melee. He can only fight with one or two of the siege pieces at once, so this isn't going to have a huge effect on the enemy's offensive capability there. Now what we can see is with everything in primal mode, they've ended up just blobbing together into this huge mosh. I think they're probably trying to engage something in the middle, I don't know. And that's a perfect target for the enemy's siege weapons. We're just going to lose literally all of our infantry in this blob as it just walks around really slowly, taking constant shots from arrows and artillery fire. We've got some dinosaurs trying to deal with the enemy's phoenixes, not quite enough right now, but we are going to have to, in general, rely on our special units, our monsters and heroes, to fight the rest of this fight, because our infantry are either completely out of control or are dead, and if they're not dead, they're going to die very soon. Barely any of them left at this point. I'm just trying to get our dinos to go and take out the enemy's hero units, and then maybe we'll have a chance taking out enemy infantry, since they are very vulnerable to just being stamped on, as we can see here, and this is going to lower their morale to the point where we can get some of them to just leave. They're also going to start coming back quite a lot from routing, which will cause the enemy to completely surround us, since they routed in all sorts of random directions. Now that they're coming back, they are just all over the place, which isn't going to help out very much. Those bolt throwers getting a nice target in the form of the flanks of our dinosaurs there. We still need to stop them firing. They're still going to kill our heroes now that they've killed all of our infantry. But things are getting even harder for Timmy over here, because more routing units are now engaging him, so he can't fight the bolt throwers anymore. Not very good at all. At least the hero-on-hero engagements are starting to go our way. Kroq-gar manages to take down an enemy Phoenix with a little bit of help from his dino pals, and there's really not much left from the enemy's army. As you can see, both sides have kind of killed each other in the general mosh at this stage. We're just trying to finish off the enemy with our units that are kind of invulnerable to their attacks, their melee attacks at least, so we have a good chance of routing everything that comes over to us to fight there. That's pretty nice, but the enemy do still have magic users and heroes who may pose a threat. This wizard is just kind of wandering around crazily. I'm not sure they knew what to do with it. And we've also managed to lock down one of the enemy's other heroes to make sure she doesn't cause too much of a hassle. We've just got her fighting front on against this Stegodon. Not going very well, especially with the ballista bolts being shot into her point blank range. She seems pretty hardy, she's able to take it, not even going to drop that longbow. She doesn't need a shield or to use her sword with two hands. She is hardcore about this, but as you can see it's not going very well, so we are going to win that engagement in the end with any luck. And kroq-gar being a super high level and being specced out, I think, to maximum in all of the melee stuff at this stage. He's pretty much the best fighter we can have. He's able to down enemy cavalry, kills one of the enemy's great eagles there with a single swipe, all looking good. And we also get some support over for Timmy. This is where most of the enemy's army is now, around the bolt throwers, so making an attack here is going to be critical, and as more and more of my units arrive, it actually routes everything that's still here, causing a mass chain rout across the entire enemy army. So at this point, we have won the battle. Now we need to try and make something of it. We need to kill as many elves as we can while they make their escape. We don't have many units left that can catch up to them, but our Carnosaurs can, and they're going to have a very fun time absolutely stomping these guys into the ground. No mercy. We need to kill as much of the enemy army as possible to make sure that this win will come to something at least. By the end, it is of course a Pyrrhic victory. We lost pretty much everything, but so did they. In terms of sheer numbers, that was not a very good fight for us at all. But of course, thanks to the replenishment system, this isn't necessarily the end of the world. All we care about are the number of units lost, and in that regard we only lost 3, some kroq-gars and 2 generic spear units, whereas the enemy lost quite a lot of stuff, and the stuff they were losing seems a bit more exotic than what we have. So, overall, I think this is going to turn out to be a very significant victory. It's just in this turn only it appears Pyrrhic, because we had so many losses among all the units that did just about survive. So now with that won, we're going to see the effect of replenishment turn the result around effectively. First, at the start of the next turn, we can see that kroq-gar's army is almost back to full strength in just a single turn because his replenishment is absolutely insane. So what we can do with the troops we now have is just move out and annihilate the survivors from one of their armies. They're gone. And I think the survivors from the other army got deleted during the end turn sequence because they were in forced march stance and lost a battle. So like that, we actually took down 2 stacks of elven troops for the loss of only 3 units on our side. Overall, that was a great trade. It just looked really bad in the moment. This is absolutely an exploit, and I should have been punished for the disastrous performance in that battle, but thanks to that delicious replenishment system we are going to absolutely get away with it, and that's ultimately going to have pretty much no effect on how we continue the campaign from here. Now we've got that Abomination army to deal with. I can see its composition now, lots of infantry, and like previous Abomination forces, it was moving towards Sudenburg, but it was raiding all the way, which reduces your movement range. So while it could have got past our defences and made an attack, we are going to be able to catch up with it this turn. Meanwhile, kroq-gar is going on the offensive to take some Abomination territory himself. I wanted to take Zandri here because it would complete one of our provinces. Unfortunately, couldn't quite get there, so we'll just wait outside. I saw the garrison wasn't very big, so it's going to be no problem to take that later. Now, the observant among you may have noted there's actually a human faction that's taken over from the orcs here in the corner of the map. It's the pirates of something or other, a human faction from the north. So what I needed to know is, can we trust them in any way? They're neutral towards us, but they are in a defensive alliance with the elves, so the elves might be twisting them to use them against us effectively. I wanted to get some sort of relation so that we could be more confident they wouldn't bother attacking us. But even though they were interested in trade, I couldn't get them to agree to it. We'll have to come back to that later. Right now, we need to deal with these abominations. The balance bar was confusing. It might have been a perfectly even battle. It might be really far in our favour. It was hard to say, apparently, so I'm going to, just in the spirit of safety, fight this one myself, even though it probably would be safe to auto-resolve it in this case. For this battle, I tried to use a sneaky strategy, but it didn't really work at all. I put 2 units of skinks ahead of the army to attract the attention of the enemy's Cygors. Since they're so powerful, I wanted them to kill our weaker units. Meanwhile, my main force isn't coming over the river in the centre of the map. I deployed right in the corner so I could run at them without going through the river, hoping that would allow me to get to the enemy's lines faster, but because the distance was further, I think it probably didn't. And besides, the Cygors are still going to do all the damage they can to us. One unit started attacking my cold ones, who were sneaking around to the back of the map. The other unit's just ignoring my skinks and going right for the higher priority targets. So that's good for the enemy, but it's going to be pretty annoying for us as we just lose tons of stuff running into the fight. So all we want to do is just get fights going across the front line and play the usual game of trying to make sure it's our spears fighting the enemy's bigger units to exploit the bonuses you get from doing that. It's going to be a tiny bit harder than it usually is because this enemy army has lots of regular melee infantry, as mentioned earlier. So in the case of all these guys, the Forsaken, whose name I previously could not remember, we're going to try and hit them with our just regular Saurus warriors, and a Saurus warrior unit is quite a lot better than Forsaken, especially with various experience upgrades, so those fights should be fine. And as we learned in the previous fight, as long as we don't lose the entire unit, it doesn't matter by how much we win, it's just that we win at all. Getting some nice friendly fire from the enemy Cygor there, so that's nice. The other one's pinned down in melee, but it's got this Help It Abomination helping it out, and together they are kind of just stomping out all of our cold ones, plus enemy reinforcements coming in to help. We're going to have to quit that engagement soon, and I think we lost pretty much all of our cold ones in that fight there. It wasn't very good at all. On the front line, using some mass debuffing to get things to accelerate a bit, this other abomination hacking through our front line is causing a bit of a distraction, reducing our damage to the enemy's units, but we'll get them in the end. We've got a Stegodon and our commander slowly killing their way through a bunch of spawn. They're not too threatened by that, they'll win that eventually. I'm going to use my priest to cool down a nice meteor strike to do some blast damage to the enemy's massed infantry here. So that was all well and good. The first time I've actually got that spell to connect with the enemy. And now the grind will just continue, and we're going to start winning. Things are starting to rout, especially their lesser units like the Ungors, so we'll have more and more space to maneuver. We'll surround the bigger things and start killing them. Easy peasy. My cold ones did, as I said, get very damaged by the fighting they were doing, and one unit's having a lot of trouble. I wanted it to disengage from the fight, but as you may know, disengaging from a messy fight is a very micro-intensive thing, so you have to do that and nothing else at the same time. Just focus on giving them the order over and over again, and they will eventually leave the melee. But in this case, it wasn't that important to save them, so I'm going to keep microing elsewhere to do these devastating, I'm sure you'll agree, rear attacks with these super slow, completely ineffective charges from our Saurus warriors. At least we might be inflicting a morale penalty making an attack like that. I don't really know. At least we'll be killing the enemy faster now that we've got more things hitting more of their things. There's a bit of lightning to try and speed this process up. I don't think it really hit very much, unfortunately, in that case. But we do win out all those grinds. Everything starts chain routing, so the battle is going to be won because of that. We'll still need to go around and finish off the unroutable units like these spawn, but that's nice because it makes sure they can't escape, so it's going to guarantee more weakness for the enemy army once everything is over. The other thing I'm trying to do is bring down the Cygors as they walk away. One of them escaped and one more was killed, so that's good, making sure the enemy army is going to be cut down to size by this victory, so you don't have to worry too much about it and can just auto-resolve it away in the future. So with that sorted, and with those elves seen off, I think we can go back to our campaign to unify our continent in the next part.